Hello everybody and welcome back. Good to talk to all of you again today, and today I've got a video for all of you with me playing the Graf Zeppelin. Now, keep in mind I haven't touched carriers in many months. Mostly because I just don't find carriers to be all that much fun anymore. Mostly because when I do play them, a lot of the games it's just seal clubbing, and I mean it doesn't really matter what tier I'm playing. Could be playing tier 10, I'm still clubbing seals, and it just makes me kind of feel dirty. I feel like I gotta take a shower after playing carriers, and it's kind of why, in a lot of cases, I haven't touched carriers in a very long time. But of course, Graf Zeppelin, after the drama a couple of months ago, well, it's actually quite a while ago, but anyways, after that drama, they went ahead and they, quote unquote, fixed her. So, what kind of carrier do we have now? Um, we have a really strong carrier. The Graf Zeppelin of today is a monster, an absolute monster. Make no mistake. The only I think carrier that can offer the Graf Zeppelin pretty decent resistance would probably be the Enterprise, because she's got two good fighter squadrons and still plenty of striking power. But if you're up against like Lexingtons, or you're up against like Shokakus or whatever, not really that big of a threat. So against another Graf Zeppelin could be interesting, especially if you're running into like a 203 Graf Zepp. Personally, I've played both the 203 and the 121, and I find the 121 to be much more preferable. I just like having torpedo bombers. I find their damage very consistent. So, beginning of the game, this Normandy hasn't even got out of essentially his own spawn yet. The Pensacola is doing what he can, has actually popped off defensive fire. I know. I know you can't see the drop markers or anything like that because, but you can tell my torpedoes are spread out. Those dive bombers were also affected by defensive fire, but doesn't matter. Normandy started the game and immediately got sent back to port. Didn't get to fire a shot, didn't really get to do anything. Graf Zeppelin. It's kind of a go back to port simulator, if you want to call it anything. So it's terrifying striking power, especially when you're playing with, well, even with the bomb, it's pretty terrifying. But like I said, I prefer the torpedoes mostly because you have that versatility against destroyers, and a single squadron of 9 armor-piercing dive bombers is still going to wreck stuff, no doubt about that. The one weakness of the Graf Zeppelin is the fighters, right? Because you don't have that many. I mean, individually, the squadron of 9 fighters, if you strafe stuff, is going to do a lot. But the problem is, you've only got 9, and then you have 7 in reserve. So you don't have that many aircraft. So, like I said, if you run up against an Enterprise, you will struggle, because the Enterprise just has near infinite numbers of fighters to throw at you. But still, if you play with some AA ships, or you play intelligently by using your AA ships effectively, that fighter squadron's enough, right? Because, like I said, the primary purpose of the Graf Zeppelin is to go around and destroy stuff with your bombers, right? The fighter is mostly there to assist in that task, maybe to intercept the enemy strike here and there, but mostly your job is to just try to destroy as many enemy surface ships and make your team's life easier. In this particular battle, I started off by removing the enemy Normandy, like right at the beginning of the battle, before the Normandy had a chance to do anything. Of course, if you look at the minimap, it's caused the enemy team to sort of run away from this flank, so we have the whole control over here. Now, you might say, well, that's because you were up against a tier 6 battleship, and that's not really fair. So I'm going to pull up a clip, a sideways clip, while my planes are going to strike another target, and you're going to look at me striking a tier 10 Yamato, and just pay attention to how much damage I'm actually going to be able to do. The dive bomber, with not the world's best RNG, was able to citadel the Yamato for like 13,000 damage. Then I bring in the 2 torpedo bomber squadrons, and this Yamato, who is at like, maybe 2/3 HP, pretty healthy at the time, is going to eat a bunch more torpedoes from my torpedo bombers, and he's going to be out of the fight for a very long time because they drop him down to a few thousand HP. So that's kind of striking power we're talking about with the Graf Zeppelin, even against tier 10s. Now, if I'm down, of course, at a battle where I'm facing like tier 6 battleships, well, yeah, this port in New Mexico, he's going to eat 11,000 first from my dive bombers, and then I'm going to torp him. Now, I do get a little bit lucky with this torpedo salvo, because you'll see what happens. There's a little bit out with the first bit of torpedoes, but the second batch hits, and of course I hit right under that number, sort of 2 turret area, boom, detonation. Okay, so 2 battleships down, gonna get my aircraft back, and let's keep going. I do have one fighter squadron. And looking back on hindsight, I should have actually maybe gone looking for their CV's planes. But like I said, it's been a long time since I've actually played a carrier, and I was a little rusty for sure. And my mind at the time was more processing the enemy ship positions and where my next strike was going to go instead of looking for targets for my fighters. But even then, right, against the Lexington, Graf Zeppelin's lone fighter squadron has no issues because you've got 9 aircraft. Lexington squadrons can't take you down because there's only one fighter squadron now. In the past, when Lexington had 2, it still had something going for it. Now with only 1, Lexington is in trouble there. If you look at the U.S. carriers, I think the only one that, like I said, is going to prove to be challenging is Enterprise, because Enterprise with those huge fighter reserves, oh, that's really difficult if you're Graf Zepp. Because as an Enterprise player, now this is another thing, if you're playing an Enterprise and you want to counter a Graf Zeppelin, what you do is take out the fighter. Doesn't matter how many fighters you throw at it, just take the fighters you've got, throw them at the Graf Zeppelin, take down the large fighter squadron that the Graf has, assuming that it's a 1-2-1. Get rid of it. And the minute you get rid of it, you now have fighter dominance, right? And now your fighters can roam around and take care of the Graf Zeppelin strikes, because the real scary part of the Graf Zeppelin is the strikes. Now, if you're playing a Graf Zeppelin that's a 203, the Graf is going to have a bit more fighters, but it's still not as much as what you have in reserve. So do keep in mind that if you're an Enterprise player, that's kind of your strategy. Shokaku, not as capable of doing that, just because Shokaku has smaller squadrons and slightly fewer reserves, but still very capable as well, right? As a Shokaku, you can do sort of a similar strategy. Just sacrifice your fighters to take down the 1-2-1 Graf Zeppelin's fighters, and then you've kind of got free reign of the map. Graf Zeppelin players, to sort of deal with that, like I said earlier, smart, good usage of your friendly AA, and you should be okay. Other than that kind of stuff, the striking power and that, the Graf Zeppelin has a few sort of other little niche bits. One of them is a quite superb secondary battery. Oh, this Tirpitz. Oh, this Tirpitz. This is gonna hurt. This is really gonna hurt. And that Tirpitz was pretty much at close to full HP. Yeah, nope. Nope, pretty much out of the fight there as well. Yeah, that's gonna hurt. The other thing about the Graf Zeppelin, aside from the planes, is it does have that like really scary secondary battery. So in the crazy situation where a destroyer, let's say, sneaks around and gets on you and wants to get up close and personal with you, you can actually go ahead and secondary them. And it's quite a lot of secondary shells that get spit out, so it's definitely no joke there. Not only that, but you also have a Hydro, so a destroyer who decides to maybe like hide in smoke, you can actually flush them out. But at the end of the day, the Graf Zeppelin is 2 things, I think. One, an incredibly powerful strike package, coupled with generally pretty easy gameplay. It's not challenging, it's not difficult. In a lot of ways, it could be described as a point-and-click adventure, if you want. Hell, I mean, I played a couple of games with the new Graf Zeppelin, and 200k damage was not a difficult task to accomplish, which for tier 8 carrier is a very, very scary number, because you're normally associating that kind of number starting with like either things like Kaga, where it just has like a god amount of strike power at a lower tier where people don't have that much AA, or you're really thinking sort of like tier 9, 10 carriers. Tier 8s, you're generally not looking at that damage number on a regular basis, but with the Graf Zeppelin, you kind of are. 200k damage is, like, again, if you're not an awful CV player, if you're someone who's okay with CVs, 200k damage is quite obtainable. It's just easy to play. The dive bombers are insanely easy to play, because with the other dive bombers, you've actually got to consider like DOT, you got to consider like manual dropping, you got to think about all these things, right? Because you've generally caught HE dive bombers, or, in the case of the USM where you do have AP dive bombers, you're like, okay, well, you got to be selective, because there's a lot of targets you can't Citadel. Graf Zeppelin's AP, you can Citadel battleships that with the USM ones you can't at all. With this one, not an issue. You can go ahead and you can Citadel them. It really is easy mode. I mean, here I go against the Colorado, who's mostly full HP up until this point, and, well, there goes half of your health. It doesn't really matter. And that was just a click drop. I don't even have to manual, don't have to do anything fancy, just click and ta-da, damage. Graf Zeppelin, in its present form, like the best way I can describe it is, it's a really easy ship to play. It's really, really stupidly easy to play. Like I said, 200k damage pretty much became the norm with the Graf Zeppelin. You know, statistically, I still haven't had that fully reflected because I had played a bunch of games with the old Graf Zepp when it was still, you know, but the more recent games I've played, I think the low end would be like 160,000, and other games are like 200 plus, and it's very easy to get just because the combination of your torpedo bombers, which, you know, you do have pretty good striking power there, along with these dive bombers that just generate on every attack against like a battleship or something. You're generating usually like 20k damage, let's say, and sometimes you can generate more if you hit the right kind of ship, right? Because but let's say on average you're getting like 20k per drop salvo, and then with the torpedoes you're getting another like 25-30,000. That's 50k per run, and you only need 4 runs. So it's incredible. It's an incredibly powerful ship, but not one that I think is all that great for the game, because fundamentally I don't think the ship is all that fun to play against, and it's not fun to play in itself because it's just too damn easy. And that coupled with like the super easy playstyle, the ease at which you're able to farm damage, and the fact that with random battles, the one CV has so much influence, right? And you have the ability, shall we say, that if there is a skill discrepancy, that the skilled player playing a really strong ship is able to just absolutely club his way through the enemy team. And there's not even a stressful, difficult kind of clubbing. It is just like ease. Total ease of doing it. It's probably the main reason why I'm just like, oh, I really want to see that CV rework, because I think it's something that's absolutely necessary for the game, because CVs in its current state is not in a healthy place at all, right? Like this game, I think if you look at the Lexington statistically, this Lexington is very, very poor statistically, which means that I was just able to run absolutely roughshod over this Lexington's team. The one game that you run into another equally skilled player, that's probably going to be the game where you're like, okay, well, you know, that was a pretty good fight and everything was kind of all right there, right? But if you're talking about anything else, if you're just meeting people who are not at your skill level, which is a lot of CV games you play, it's not fair, period. So, you know, hopefully this gives you a sense of what the Graf Zepp is capable of now, and also why potentially that CV rework is so darn important. Let me know what you think in the comment section below, but of course let's also take a look at this game's performance. 207,000 total damage for about 522,000 credits, 3,838 experience. Experience wasn't that high. 13 torpedo hits, 11 hits the Citadel with dive bombers. And we'll have to look at the total damages for each of the individual weapon systems. There's high caliber, there's first blood. So overall, a pretty darn good game, I would have to say. Base experience was 1,672, like way on top of the team, but it's not as high as, you know, if you were in, let's say, a tier 10 game. Tier 10 games, if you get this kind of result, you're typically looking at like 2,000 plus base experience. When you're talking about a tier 8 game where you do have tier 6 ships, you're looking at that. Note the enemy Normandy had 0 EXP, by the way. Take a look at the damage done, and you'll see the crazy amount of AP damage, right? 103,000 with armor piercing, 104,000 with torpedoes. It's pretty insane. Like I said, typically with one strike, you should be averaging like 50k damage a strike. Yeah. Make no mistake, Graf Zeppelin is a scary, scary ship. And of course, finally, let's take also a look at the credits earned section. With the premium account, almost 400,000 credits after all the deductions. Had I been on a free account, it would have been about 225,000. Anyways, folks, that's all I have for you today. I do have another video on the Monahan that's going to come up, but originally it was supposed to be Monahan video first and then Graf Zepp, but the Monahan one, I didn't have all the great footage for it, so I'm going to go play some more games with that ship and collect some more. But for now, enjoy the Graf Zepp video. Of course, have yourselves a good day, take care of yourselves, and I'll talk to all of you again soon.